I'm going to move on now to the next question, and I'm going to ask one of our students in his final year, Matt Bailey, if he'd like to ask a question.
Okay, I'd just like to ask the panel, do you think it's wise to promote the use of biofuels to heat buildings when their production quite often can displace food production?
Yeah, interesting, big question. Who would like to pick up that one?
I'll start. It's a difficult one to answer. It's deeply political, and the data isn't necessarily all out there. There's some debate about the price instability and to what extent it's caused by biofuels. I mean, there is one statistic that I read recently is that 30% of the American maize harvest is going to biofuels, which is a staggering amount. So it's hard to believe that it doesn't have an impact on prices and the availability of food. So we need to be very cautious. I think that we need to make a distinction, though, between what's called first generation, second generation biofuels. I mean, second generation biofuels, things like wheat straw can be digested and produce a biofuel. And so effectively what was a waste now goes into fuel production, so there's no competition for fuel. So that might be the way ahead. The difficulty then arises is, do you build walls out of your wheat straw or do you turn it into biofuels? But that's a pleasant problem there.
Anybody else like to pick up on that one?
I'm happy to say something. I think that it is a complicated question. I mean, the short answer probably is no, which is probably not the right thing to say in this film. And partly because there's more value in energy than there is in food, and therefore who wouldn't sell their food for energy if they could? Also issues like, I think in ethanol, I don't know the exact figures, but it takes a lot more energy and carbon to make the ethanol than you get out of it by burning it. So you're going backwards. What I think we desperately need in this country is a big plan of how these precious resources are going to be allocated in the long-term future. And the Centre for Alternative Technology did a very good report, Zero Carbon Britain, which does actually set out a plan which shows how you might use biomass, and they suggest that biomass would all be used for transportation. Because that's where you need a really concentrated portable fuel, whereas heating buildings is a low-grade activity, and actually you could just put a jumper on. Having said that, I think there's an issue of timing, in that heating systems may last for 25 years, and maybe it's reasonable to use a biofuel now, while other uses are changing their sources of supply. But in the future, you might well have to change that fuel. So.
Can I add just one thing? I guess that, I mean, obviously it is an interesting and challenging question, but I think that most of the times we have to sort of answer with another question. So what is the alternative? Because every time we wonder and ponder actually the feasibility and availability of a technology, most of the times the answer is not an answer per se. It's not a deterministic answer, but from a design perspective, from a designer perspective, is however can I actually do it? Is there any other way that I can achieve the same heating of the buildings? Is it not more viable to ask people to wear jumpers, as Bill was saying? Or can I use passive methods to use the building? Or can I, if I'm especially at the design stage, can I design the building so that I don't need that much heat? I can actually use passive techniques. I can actually use according to the function thermal mass or things like that. So I guess that every time we assess or we evaluate the feasibility and reliability of a technology, we always have to actually do it in the context of whatever else is available. However else can I actually achieve the same objective?
But at the end of the day, it will have to be money as well. Yeah. Because one of the things that happened in South Asia is they start cutting all the rainforest trees just because they wanted to kind of grow things that to be used as biofuels, because the European Union was putting laws onto that respect. And then kind of the European Union retracted on what they were doing, when was that, 4 or 5 years ago? So it's just kind of, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to money. It's like how much you pay for food, how much you pay for energy, and how much it costs us.
What is criminal, I think, which is one of the unintended consequences of the British way of thinking about things at the moment, where everything's put in terms of carbon. People say, well, I'll put in a nice biomass boiler. That's zero carbon. That means I can use all the energy there is, and I won't put in a load of other technologies. So you You don't get the passive things right because you're investing so much in a low carbon.
And it also happens when they started the program of the building schools for the future, especially around Bristol, all the projects they had, I don't know, 15 schools or something done like that. And then all of them, all the stakeholders said, let's put biomass. But at the time they built the number 15, there was not enough biomass in kind of in a localized area to be able to fill those schools. So you're kind of thinking, well, very good, but how do you do that?